Welcome to the Epic Bible Stories channel. Prepare to journey back in time to Sodom, a city shrouded in both legend and archaeological mystery. Did you know that in Sodom, the women wore garments so incredibly light and transparent that they left almost nothing to the imagination? And during their nighttime ceremonies, it was a common sight to see them adorning their bodies with pigments crafted from liquid gold, which shimmered and gleamed under the soft moonlight. 13. The city protected by impenetrable walls. Imagine a city encircled by walls so immense and formidable that no military force dared to even contemplate an attack. When someone feels completely safe, how far are they truly willing to push the boundaries? Sodom's walls were truly engineering marvels. A double-layered system rising over 10 meters high, the equivalent of a 3-story building. Between these two imposing layers was a strategically designed corridor, allowing the city's defenders to move swiftly and safely. The very soil of the region expelled bitumen in astounding abundance, a thick, black, viscous substance that oozed from the earth like small, spontaneous springs. Egyptian traders, for example, paid exorbitant prices to utilize it in the intricate mummification processes for their pharaohs and for meticulously sealing ceremonial vessels. In 1993, excavations near the Dead Sea uncovered something truly astonishing: thick layers of ash and vitrified materials, as if melted by an extreme heat far beyond what any technology of that ancient era could possibly produce. The heat was so utterly intense that stones literally melted like wax, and the land remained barren for centuries afterward. Ancient testimonies from locations many miles away describe a sky that turned blood red and a column of smoke so towering it seemed to reach the very stars. Whatever the cause, be it a meteor, a volcanic explosion, or something even more profoundly mysterious, the event was so devastating that it left indelible marks not only on the very rocks, but also in the collective memory of dozens of ancient cultures across the globe. A single shipment of this material could be worth the equivalent of an entire palace. This immense prosperity cemented Sodom's reputation as one of the wealthiest cities of its era. However, as is often the case when fortune comes too easily, the moral values of its people began a concerning decline. The persistent question remains: does easy wealth inevitably lead to corruption, or is it truly possible to prosper while still upholding integrity and humanity? One could simply walk through the landscape and observe dark, shiny puddles forming naturally. As dusk approached, anyone drawing near the city would witness the setting sun reflecting off the reddish bricks, creating an illusion that Sodom itself was engulfed in flames. The city gates, crafted from wood heavily reinforced with metal, were so incredibly massive that they demanded the combined strength of 6 men just to open them. This extraordinary defensive structure instilled in the inhabitants a profound sense of absolute invulnerability. And with that pervasive sense of security came behaviors that grew increasingly bold, unbound by any moral restraint. 12. The bitumen that sprang from the ground and was worth more than gold. Few places in the ancient world have ever witnessed such literal, overflowing wealth as Sodom. This remarkable resource attracted merchants from far-off lands. Caravans traveled immense distances solely to acquire Sodom's precious bitumen. 11. A destruction so violent it still leaves evidence today. It sounds like a scene ripped straight from an apocalyptic film, but compelling archaeological evidence strongly points to a genuine, catastrophic event having occurred in the region of Sodom. 10. Women so adorned their bones became deformed. In no other ancient city did the use of jewelry reach such an extraordinary intensity as it did in Sodom. Excavations have unearthed female skeletons exhibiting deformations in the neck and ankle bones, a direct result of the constant, immense weight of gold necklaces and anklets worn continuously since childhood. Walking through the city streets meant being enveloped by the distinctive, melodic sound of jewelry clinking with every single step. Local women wore an exclusive fabric so incredibly fine and translucent that it revealed the delicate silhouette of the body underneath. It was a rare and astonishing combination of sheer delicacy and remarkable strength. Light as a flower petal, yet robust enough to support the heavy gold ornaments that adorned their bodies. And nights without interruption, commencing at the new moon and concluding only with the arrival of the full moon. The consequences of this temporary liberation were so intense that many visitors chose to flee before the celebrations concluded, utterly shocked by the depravity they witnessed. During this expansive period, the entire city transformed into a colossal open-air ballroom, where music, dancing, and feasting seemed utterly endless. The streets were vibrant with elaborate decorations, colorful ribbons, rare flowers brought from distant mountains, and flags fluttering rhythmically in the wind. The continuous, captivating sound of harps, drums, and flutes echoed throughout the city, weaving a hypnotic and immersive atmosphere. As night descended, hundreds of torches bathed the city in a warm, flickering light, while the air filled with the enticing aroma of roasted meats, freshly baked bread, and exotic spices. The most controversial aspect of these extravagant celebrations was the complete suspension of all civil laws during the festivities. As you traversed the bustling streets of Sodom, you would witness women gracefully draped in layers of this shimmering fabric, reflecting light like glistening dew under the sun. During festive nights, particularly under the glow of the full moon, their garments appeared to be woven from pure liquid light, creating a truly hypnotic visual spectacle. The weaving technique was so extraordinarily advanced that the fabric could be effortlessly rolled up and passed through a finger ring, occupying less space than a modern handkerchief. Foreign merchants paid immense fortunes for even small fragments of this textile wonder, the precise formula for which was tragically lost forever after the city's devastating destruction. If you're curious to learn how this incredible fabric was made, simply comment "fabric" below. The sheer volume of that sound even served as an indicator of a family's social status. The louder the jingle, the greater their prestige. During festivals, the collective gleam and shimmer of these ornaments were so brilliant that they made the night feel as bright as day. But these women were not merely symbols of luxury. Unlike many ancient societies, women in Sodom had access to remarkably uncommon rights. They could own land, actively run businesses, and even initiate a divorce. This exceptional level of female autonomy was perceived by some neighboring peoples as a sign of an inverted society, one that brazenly defied the traditional norms of the time. But what exactly transpired within the very temples of Sodom? What enigmatic laws governed a city that so freely broke with so many conventions? And what truly befell the foreigners who, by ill fortune or sheer carelessness, fell into their merciless hands? 9. The garments that left visitors in shock. No other city in the ancient world dared to push the boundaries of fashion as much as Sodom. 8. The festivals that lasted entire weeks. It may sound like an exaggeration, but Sodom truly hosted celebrations that persisted for days. During these days, no common rules applied, creating a setting of total freedom and, at times, utter chaos. 7. The temples where women performed secret rituals. Can you possibly imagine a place where ordinary women transformed into figures of immense spiritual power under the radiant full moon? In Sodom, temples were solemnly dedicated to Astarte, the revered goddess of fertility and love, and it was here that these women assumed the profound role of priestesses during mysterious and potent ceremonies. These sanctuaries were striking in their architectural design: towering columns shaped like stylized trees, and open ceilings that allowed the ethereal silver moonlight to stream directly onto the central altar. While many ancient cultures exalted the act of welcoming strangers as a sacred duty, Sodom systematically criminalized compassion and aggressively made hostility the prevailing norm. Even extending a simple drink of water could lead to a brutal public beating. Penalties ranged from public flogging to truly brutal executions. One of the most shocking stories is that of a young woman named Pelitit, who was condemned to death simply for feeding a beggar. Tied to a wall and covered in honey, she was left to the mercy of insects, slowly enduring a cruel and deeply symbolic death. This complete disregard for empathy reveals the much darker side of Sodom, a society that not only accepted cruelty, but elevated it to state policy. When a civilization actively punishes kindness, how long can it be before it loses its very soul for good? Imagine an exhausted traveler after days of arduous journeying through the parched desert. As he glimpses Sodom, he perceives a prosperous city, a potential refuge. This extraordinary feat was made possible through a unique combination of the Dead Sea's exceptionally high salt content and a surprisingly advanced understanding of fermentation and conservation techniques. In the grand halls of their opulent palaces, massive cedarwood tables were lavishly covered with delicate ceramic dishes filled with preserved delicacies. Smoked meats meticulously sealed with bitumen fruits, submerged in honey or salt, and breads fermented with aromatic herbs, all arranged with near theatrical sophistication. But as he draws near, he finds no shelter or water, only relentlessly closed doors and deeply suspicious faces. Cruelty was not merely present, it was formally institutionalized. The inner walls, meticulously lined with polished metal mirrors, dramatically amplified the glow of the torches, forging a truly magical and otherworldly atmosphere. During the full moon nights, women of high social status adorned themselves in flowing blue tunics embroidered with intricate silver thread and led rituals that, according to ancient accounts, could literally make the very ground tremble. Archaeological excavations have uncovered concrete evidence of these temples, including altars and female figurines depicted in commanding postures. These rites not only bestowed upon women a position of immense respect, but also an unprecedented level of social and religious power for that time. But perhaps the true scandal in the eyes of neighboring cities was precisely this: women possessing such profound influence and autonomy. 6. The laws that punished those who helped strangers with death. Sodom was also notorious for something that would be utterly unthinkable today: a legal code that shockingly condemned hospitality. Any citizen who dared to offer assistance to a stranger without demanding payment suffered severe punishments. 5. The banquets with food preserved for decades. It may seem unbelievable, but the people of Sodom mastered food preservation methods that allowed them to store food for years, even across generations. During these lavish banquets, guests reclined on luxurious couches while servants meticulously poured goblets of wine that had been aged for decades. The most astonishing detail: many hosts proudly served food that had been preserved since their grandparents' time, a remarkable form of edible inheritance. Archaeological findings confirm these practices, with sealed jars discovered containing food remnants still identifiable even after centuries. A place where foreigners were greeted not with warmth, but as prey in a ritualistic hunt. In Sodom, the arrival of foreigners was signaled by the ringing of special bells at dusk. In Sodom, this twisted vision was the terrifying norm. The city's courthouse stood as a stark symbol of perverse power, with imposing columns of red marble and formidable walls. Archaeological evidence strongly suggests that during critical times, such as severe droughts or devastating earthquakes, the city resorted to the utterly unthinkable: human sacrifice. Inside, 5 judges were seated on elevated thrones, clad in black robes elaborately embroidered with gold and crimson, resembling the dark priests of a cruel parody of justice. The atmosphere was stifling, the air thick with the sickly sweet perfume of incense, designed both to disorient the accused and to mask the pervasive moral decay of the place. One of the most telling cases is that of a merchant named Eleazar. During his stay, he compassionately fed a starving beggar and was immediately arrested. In court, the judge presented him with a horrifying false choice: surrender his entire cargo as a punitive fine or face trial, which everyone knew inevitably meant torture and death. Eleazar reluctantly gave up his goods to save his life, only to later discover that the beggar was an accomplice of the very judges, an integral part of a corrupt scheme designed to extort vulnerable travelers. In this profoundly distorted system, the innocent were harshly punished, while the true criminals, the judges themselves, always profited. When the supposed guardians of justice become its worst violators, is there any hope left for society? Or had Sodom already crossed the irreversible point of no return? But contrary to what one might assume, that sound was not a welcome. It was a clear signal to the citizens that the entertainment had begun. Enticed by the city's prosperous facade, many travelers only recognized the grave danger when it was already far too late. Doors slammed shut in their faces. An impalpable atmosphere of hostility rapidly set in. Ancient accounts describe a truly cruel custom, capturing foreigners, tying them in public squares, and forcing them to dance barefoot over searing hot coals, while a jeering crowd hurled small stones and openly mocked their agonizing pain. The objective wasn't simply to inflict injury, but to utterly destroy the victim's dignity. Even more shocking is the fact that these practices were not hidden. They were openly accepted, actively promoted, and even celebrated as an integral part of the local culture. Sodom had twisted barbarism into a spectacle and inhumanity into a deeply ingrained tradition. When a society begins to derive pleasure from the suffering of others, one must gravely ask, how deep can the human soul truly sink? This impressive storage capability ensured Sodom's survival during severe droughts that devastated other cities in the region. However, this technical mastery also harbored a dark side. In a society that never feared scarcity, a culture of unrestrained abundance, egregious waste, and pervasive excess took deep root. When humans no longer fear hunger, the natural checks that typically limit consumption and sustain social balance begin to erode, ultimately resulting in a society consumed by its own overindulgence. And this is only the beginning. In the upcoming accounts, you'll uncover how Sodom's judges transformed justice into a cruel spectacle, the terrifying sacrificial rituals performed in the temples, and the scientific theories that may finally explain the total destruction of a once magnificent city. 4. The treatment of travelers that made anyone want to flee Sodom. Imagine a city where extending hospitality to a traveler was not merely frowned upon, but an actual crime. 3. The court where criminals judge the innocent. If there's an image that feels pulled straight from a nightmare, it's this: a justice system where the guilty themselves sit as judges, and truth is merely an inconvenient detail. 2. Human sacrifices in times of crisis. Nowhere else did the desperate urge to maintain prosperity lead to such extreme and horrifying actions as in Sodom. At the very heart of the city, the great temple concealed a lower level rarely seen by ordinary citizens. Spiral staircases descended into a circular chamber where the air was thick and chillingly cold. Torches burned with eerie bluish flames, fueled by mineral salts from the Dead Sea, casting an ominous light on walls covered in mysterious symbols. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, long considered merely a moral parable, may have been a real catastrophic event, undeniably documented through natural forces. At the center, a polished black stone altar chillingly reflected that ominous glow. Even the story of Lot's wife being turned into a pillar of salt takes on a new perspective. The soil of the Valley of Sodom is highly saline, and the extreme heat of the explosion could have instantly calcified human bodies, encasing them in salt crystals. To this very day, bizarre salt formations around the Dead Sea, some vaguely human in shape, continue to intrigue both locals and scholars alike. More than just a religious narrative, Sodom has become a powerful cultural symbol, an icon of moral decay and divine judgment that has transcended centuries and civilizations. Expressions like, "as corrupt as Sodom," are still widely used today, even among those who have never read the biblical texts. Perhaps the deepest legacy left by Sodom is the profound warning against the dangers of moral arrogance. The story doesn't just condemn isolated behaviors. It reveals the downfall of an entire society that brazenly placed itself above any ethical code, foolishly believing itself immune to consequences. In today's world, with its advanced technology and unprecedented levels of wealth, it's impossible not to see unsettling parallels. Just like in Sodom, many modern societies place luxury above empathy, fleeting pleasure above genuine responsibility, and raw power above true justice. And melted materials, all precisely dated to around 1700 BC, which is exactly the period associated with the biblical figure Abraham. But the most impressive findings emerged from chemical analyses of these samples. Tiny spheres of extraterrestrial origin were identified, alongside melting patterns that could only have been caused by temperatures impossible to achieve with Bronze Age technology. In 2008, a scientific team proposed a compelling theory that provides a precise explanation for what is described in Genesis. An asteroid or comet may have exploded over the valley of Sodom, causing an airburst similar to the Tunguska event in Siberia in 1908, but demonstrably far more powerful. The shock wave would have annihilated everything within seconds, and the heat of the explosion, hotter than the surface of the sun, would have instantly incinerated the city. Distant witnesses may have seen a column of fire descending from the sky, followed by a deafening explosion and a mushroom-shaped cloud rising on the horizon, exactly as the Bible says. Abraham witnessed from the mountain heights. Grooves meticulously carved into its sides were designed to carefully direct the flow of blood. Excavations have revealed unimaginable marks, precise cuts, and undeniable signs of exposure to fire. Even more disturbing, the majority of the victims were youths between 12 and 16 years old. During these horrific rituals, pounding drums echoed throughout the city, beating in a hypnotic rhythm that heralded sheer terror. These rituals reveal a society that crossed every conceivable ethical boundary in the desperate name of survival and wealth. A culture that sacrificed its own children had already lost any last trace of humanity. 1. The scientific theory that finally explains the total destruction of Sodom. What for centuries was dismissed as myth or religious allegory now receives surprising support from modern science. In recent decades, archaeologists working near the cliffs of the Dead Sea discovered a distinct layer of ash, charcoal. This remarkable correlation between the biblical account and cutting-edge scientific data raises a compelling question. If stories once deemed mythological are now being confirmed by science, how many other ancient legends might contain vital fragments of truth? If this message resonated with you, please consider leaving a super chat to help us continue spreading the word of God. And don't stop here. Click on the next video and discover 5 truly shocking things that happened right after the death of Moses. You'll be absolutely amazed by what transpired. See you soon.